Hey everyone, it's Cappy. Welcome to a special end-of-season series of Beyond the Plate, brought to you by our friends at PepsiCo Foods. Over the years, we've brought you memorable conversations and stories shaping today's food culture. This series is no different. We're joined by the members of PepsiCo Foods' first ever Culinary Advisory Board. From chefs and authors to food scientists and entrepreneurs, PepsiCo Foods has brought together 6 industry-leading culinarians, and I have the privilege of being one of them. Together, we serve as strategic advisors to help further the culinary journey at PepsiCo Foods, working to inspire new ways for people to experience PepsiCo's iconic food brands and bring more smiles to the table. In each episode of the series, we're going to uncover how this initiative can impact the food industry and how each advisor contributes their unique culinary expertise. Please enjoy this episode as we go beyond the plate with PepsiCo Foods U.S. Culinary Advisory Board member, Tiffany Derry. Tiffany, tell us something we don't know about you and your culinary career.
Hey, Cappy. I would first say that when I was 15 years old, I started working at IHOP, International House of Pancakes. And ultimately, I wanted to be a cook, but I was not allowed at that particular IHOP. So I ended up being a server. So that was how I got my first introduction into the restaurant business at 15. A little bit of time later, I was cooking and running expos. So it was the most exciting time of my life in that moment. Like to be able to have a real job, cooking, adulting.
I love it. Okay, so when you first got the ask to be part of this inaugural Culinary Advisory Board, what went through your head?
Wow. Me? I mean, a little, me, tippy toes, First, I felt honored. I live in Dallas, Texas. You see a lot. It is the headquarters for PepsiCo Foods. And it's something I grew up loving. I grew up loving so many things. So I felt honored. I was excited. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to get to work.
I love that. Okay, so what would you say you bring to the table, so to speak, or what can we expect from your involvement?
As a long-time lover of many, many things, I bring the experience of enjoying it all as one. But, I traveled the world from a very global standpoint is kind of how I look at everything. Yes, I am from the South, but I study abroad. That is what I do. And I love looking to see sort of what are the trends universally that we're looking at and also in our country. What are food patterns? What are restaurants doing differently than stadiums? What's the fast casual setting? And how we might be able to implement what I do on an everyday basis into what PepsiCo is also doing.
Along those lines of how you would incorporate that, we had this media launch dinner in New York, which was incredibly delicious. And I'm still talking about, so fun. I'm still talking about your dish, the Pepsi braised pork cheek. Can you just make us all hungry again and explain what you did?
I think I could do that. So I really wanted to express sort of who I am as a cook and how I cook. But also I wanted to use something that I grew up loving, which is Pepsi. And so the idea was I've done this dish. It is a pork cheek that we braise down. We normally would do it with caramel. And I started thinking about all the flavors that you get with Pepsi. And you get this sort of caramel undertone note and you get the sweetness. And I kept going, it would be amazing with the pork. So what we did was we braised down that pork with Pepsi, a little bit of beef stock, some allspice, some Scotch bonnet. So it had a little bit of spice. So you have the sweetness, you have the spice, braise that down till it was pork tender. And then we paired it with plantains that were sort of just blended. So you get really smooth, delicious, tart, a little sweet, all of those flavors that go together. And then obviously some carrots. We needed some veggie on the plate. But the fun is really all of it coming together. So the sweetness of the Pepsi, the spice of the Scotch bonnet, all the fresh herbs that you did, and then the pickled fresh herbs and spices on top as well.
Okay, so for the Tiffany Derry fans, correct me if I'm wrong, this is on the menu at one of your restaurants, right?
That is correct. It's at Root Southern Table. We do a dish very similar. And I just said, I think that people would absolutely love it. In fact, I'm like, okay, guys, I think we need to do this in the restaurant because I felt like the Pepsi gave something that caramel didn't give on its own.
Immediately books ticket to Dallas. I love it so much. Okay, so I love the techniques that you're pulling in here And for our listeners at home or a home cook, let's say, who have PepsiCo food brands in their pantry, can you give us like a tip or unique way that people can incorporate them into their cooking?
I think sometimes we get so caught into like how we eat things, how we do certain things. And I think opening up sort of our eyes and going, what are the foods that we love? What are the PepsiCo foods that we love? And what essentially do? They bring flavor. They bring crunch if we're talking about certain types of chips, right? We're talking about the sweetness and the overall flavor that you get if we're talking about some of the Pepsi products. And looking at it in a whole, there are so many different things we can do. And I look at it more of like texture and flavor. And so if you look at it in that way, I love the idea that like Cheetos, right? You got the Cheeto dust that you have, the Cheetah that you have, right? And then you can add that flavor if you were grinding up some of the chips. It becomes a batter because it's crunchy now. We do a dish, shrimp and grits, amazing, done with Cheetos, right? So you could take that sort of cheesiness that you would get and it would normally just be on the inside and now it's on the outside and the inside. So there's so many ways to be creative in the kitchen using some of it.
I love that. Okay, so wrapping it up here, if you could only eat one PepsiCo Foods brand for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ooh, good question. I would probably go with Quaker Oats. I love me some oatmeal and I love like the old fashioned oats. I think it's just a canvas for all kinds of flavor. I do not like having the same thing every day. So I see myself definitely playing with like bringing in fresh apples and having in that cinnamon. And obviously there's so many flavor profiles that already exist. But I feel like if you add in the freshness of fruit and you add in yogurt and you add in jams or jellies that you may have in your home. You can peanut butter oatmeal, right? Like there's so many different flavor profiles that you can do to the oats. And then if you are into the savory, you can make the oats savory as well. They're also a great bed if you want to fry chicken. Blend those oats up. They're nice and crispy. So I think it's just a lot of stuff you can do.
I love that. So I was actually going to ask you your thoughts on savory oats and you nailed it. Find Tiffany on Instagram at MasterChefTD. Thank you for tuning in to this special series. To learn more about PepsiCo Foods, visit PepsiCo.com. Follow them on social media at PepsiCo. PepsiCo Foods, we thank you. This series was produced by myself, along with Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, and Sean Petrosian. Find me and keep up to date with this podcast across all social media platforms at On Cappy's Plate or go to BeyondThePlatePodcast.com. Our digital media producer is Sarah McClellan-Mee. Our music has been composed by Goldford. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.